Okay, you hearing this?
Can y'all hear us both okay?
All right, good. All right, welcome everyone to Flyover Camp. I'm Ann.
I'm Jennifer Wadella.
And we're very excited to present to you and be the kickoff speech for this conference today.
We love conferences.
You have a clicker mic?
Oh. Technology is hard. Is your Bluetooth on?
5 minutes ago. What if I don't touch it?
This isn't nearly as bad as when I gave a talk last week, and like the pinnacle of it was this video with audio I had created, and then it didn't work, and so I had like done all this build up, and the video plays, and there's no audio, and it was just a dumpster fire. So hopefully that'll be the bad experience. All right, no clicker for us. We get to be lame.
Well, I guess I can use it on the screen. Huh?
Yeah. Well, sad face.
I do have to be able to click it somehow. Let's see here. Where? Okay, hold on. Give me my mouse back.
I was actually tweeting the other day about how are we like talking about putting people on Mars and we can't even get like HDMI setups working consistently. It blows my mind.
I can't see my computer phone screen. So.
Are we?
Okay.
Oh, we're clicking now. It's magically working.
Okay, you click it. I'm not going to touch anything. Cool. All right, guys, we're in business.
Okay, functioning clicker.
I swear we know what we're doing. We program all the time.
Oh, it'll be okay. So we wanted to introduce ourselves because you may not know who we are. We're excited to get to know who you are, but my name is Jennifer Wadella. I am a former pro video gamer. I am the founder and president of Kansas City Women in Technology, a local nonprofit trying to get more women in tech careers. I'm a JavaScript developer. Sorry, please don't hate me. International speaker, and I love brewing kombucha.
Okay. I'm Ann Gaffigan, former pro track and field athlete, official super fan of Kansas City Women in Tech. I think it goes without saying that I'm a PHP developer. Thank you very much. Owned a software development company for 12 plus years and now am Chief Technology Officer and a partner at National Land Realty. I'm also Jalen's mom. She was actually going to come today, but she ditched me for a sleepover. So
yeah, she was excited.
She missed her shout out.
And she missed getting money because she has a little swear jar, and she knows that I like to swear a lot, and she's going to get money from it.
Yep.
So.
That's the money.
Okay, introductions.
All right, so we want to share with you the lessons that we've learned about striking a balance between opposing forces in life and in career.
A lot of the world is black and white, and I think Ann and I both live in a little bit of a gray area where we believe you don't have to be one thing or another, and so that was kind of an underlying theme for this. So one of the first things we want to talk about is how to be formidable, how to pursue your potential with intention and ambition, and excel in your career.
And at the same time, how to be kind. So how to play well with others, embrace differences, and in general, be a good person.
And something we are very much in agreement on, how to take no shit. Understand the game, don't let it play you. Do everything you can to be pragmatic and be successful, and don't let others call your shots. So first, let's talk about intentionality and being very active and purposeful in everything that we do.
All right, so I love this quote by Mary Oliver. Tell me, what is it that you want to do with your one wild and precious life? If I read this quote every morning, I would probably be much more intentional with my day. So when I remember to, it's a much better day. If you take one thing away from our presentation today, it is that you are the most dominating force in your own life. There are lots of things that are out of your control, sure, but you are the most dominating force and the most in control out of all the different forces in your life. You have the capability to steer it in different directions. It's up to you to react appropriately, seize opportunities, face challenges. It's up to you to take that power for yourself. So what do you want out of your career? Have you thought about that lately, or are you just taking it day by day? How can you get there? What's the roadmap? What are the things that are in your way right now? What are the things that are going to come up and be in your way in the future? And how are you going to tackle them? So let's start with self-advocacy. So this is speaking up for yourself, having your own back. Self-advocacy do's and don'ts. Don't expect your career to just work out on its own.
Do seek out learning opportunities, mentors, and like-minded peers. Build your tribe. This is one of the most important intentional things you can do.
Don't rely on other people to speak up for you and be upset when they don't.
Work on being confident in your value and being able to explain what value you bring to the table. And I feel like this is very hard for a lot of developers, which is why we wanted to hit on it. It sometimes feels like bragging when in reality it's really just explaining your value add. What have you done that has made you a productive team member, and feeling like you can speak up and be confident in explaining that.
And it's also about not getting taken for granted, not being a doormat and getting stomped all over. So we're going to share some of our own experiences here. So this is a story that I really like to tell because it was a huge turning point in my career. And looking back, if I hadn't had the strength and really the anger in the moment to stand up for myself, a lot of things would be different. I wouldn't be where I am today. So in 2008, I had my own company and my own clients, and I took on a new client that was introduced to me by a mutual friend. And this guy was different than anybody I'd ever worked with before. I had worked with a lot of nonprofits, big and small, or small to medium-sized companies. Everyone was pretty nice and easy to work with and very grateful. This guy had very high expectations. Okay, he was an academic All-American at Nebraska. He played football on the 2-time winning championship team. He went out and played NFL for 11 years. Alpha male, okay? Alpha male. And so the first 3 meetings that I sat with this guy and showed him the progress that I was making on his website, he ripped everything to shreds. He didn't like anything. This had never happened to me in my entire life. Everyone always liked what I did. I followed all the rules. I did everything I was supposed to. I got A's all the time, and it had worked pretty well for me so far. Okay? This guy liked nothing. Everything needed to look different. Everything needed to work differently. He wasn't a total asshole, but he was not mincing words. Okay? So the 4th time I went to meet with him, and at this point we had gotten past kind of the design stage and how things were going to work. And we had gotten to the stage where I was going to show him some progress and some of the future plans for how this custom back-end system was going to work for him, okay? And what he had was a real estate company that specialized in selling recreational land. So not commercial, not residential, farmland, hunting land, stuff like that. Very different. And there wasn't a lot of technology built for a company like that to manage everything that they have and feed to their website, etc. So I was building something for him. And so the 4th meeting we had, I drove to the meeting just talking myself into this whole conversation because I didn't want to go. And I told myself that if he acted like that again, I was going to tell him, listen, we're not a good fit. Like, you don't like anything that I do, we're not a good fit. Can't do this. So I sit down with him and his 2 assistants, and I start walking him through the beginnings of this back-end portal. And he did a complete 180. I'm a PHP developer, so as you can imagine, I'm good at the back-end stuff. The design, maybe not so great, okay? So all of a sudden, he's starting to see what I'm really good at. And he was so floored and taken aback that his initial reaction was, I'm going to have you sign something that says that you're not going to do this for any other company. And something in me just, ooh-wee. You know, it was like my brother just saying something to me for the 10th time when I was a kid, like, and finally yelling at him. And I looked at him and I pointed at him and I said, absolutely not, I will not sign anything. I'm not your employee. I'm not your business partner. I can go do this for anyone else that I want to. You're getting a discounted rate because you were introduced to me by a mutual friend, and that's what you're getting. And I made the 2 assistants so uncomfortable that they left the room and left me and him at this conference table. And this guy, by the way, is like 6'2", 280, he's a big guy, okay? He played center, and he completely backed down. Was like, whoa, 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 I didn't mean to make you mad, you know? Like, oh my gosh, she's got that in her, holy crap. And he was like, listen, all I'm trying to say is this is incredible. There's nothing like it in our industry, and, you know, we'll talk about this later, you know, maybe we'll go in on it together, but I'm just saying no one else in this company has it, and I just don't want to see it given away. And I was like, well, I don't give things away. They pay me for it. So we kind of like faked having the rest of our conversation because we both were all thinking about the conversation we just had, and so we faked, you know, the rest of the meeting about whatever, like, oh yeah, and here's another feature, you know. And one of his assistants slowly came back to the table and he slid her a note and she left. And come to find out, that note was, get her check now, because I had sent him an invoice a few days before and I didn't have the check yet, which was fine, but he wanted to make sure I had that check before I left. So when I left, I started to drive away, and all of a sudden I almost hit one of his assistants who had run out to the car. And she's like, and so I rolled down the window and she goes, good job in there. So I drove away. Now, fast forward, we ended up going into a partnership, and licensing the software that I built for him, which was entirely his idea and his direction as to what it would do. So we did build it together. And we ended up licensing that software to several other land brokerages around the country. And it worked out very well for them, and we realized we were, in fact, selling a license of this software to competitors of our company, right? And it was working so well for them, we weren't sure we wanted to keep doing that. And so we decided, let's just keep building this software and make it as awesome as it can be and make it take our real estate company to the next level. So we focused on that. And within a year or two, we started having meetings with another land real estate company out of South Carolina called National Land Realty. We end up merging with them. And so he and I are now partners in that company, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer. So the reason that I am a partner in the company and a Chief CTO at the company I'm at today is because I stood up for myself instead of just saying okay and signing a non-compete.
Fuck yeah. So there are situations like that we can control, and then there are sometimes situations that you just cannot control. I invited my dad here today, and I remember when I was younger, him telling me about the book, Who Moved My Cheese? And it's interesting if you've never experienced that before, but I remember the first time my cheese was moved at a company. I had this amazing boss, and I've had a lot of shitty bosses. And so this is the first time I really had a leader, somebody I could look up to, somebody I could definitely learn and I could grow from. And I remember, like, me and a couple other guys on the team got called into this office, very somber, and we found out, well, our leader was so good, they were taking him off our team and putting him on a dumpster fire team to go fix their problems. And I was crushed, because this is somebody I really enjoyed working under, that was very amazing and inspirational to me, and I was completely devastated. And there was nothing I could do about this situation. I had no power there. I couldn't follow him. I would have if I could. And so I went to the bar and I cried into my martini. And then I went to him the next day and I was like, hey, can I have some of your time? And I was like, hey, I've really enjoyed learning from you. I've really enjoyed working on a team. Will you be my mentor? And so even though there's a situation completely out of my control, there was nothing I could do about it. I took steps to do what I needed to do for my career to better myself by building some sort of a relationship with somebody that I really, really stepped up and looked up to. And he's been just a great influence throughout my career in helping me. So finding a mentor and not being afraid to ask for a mentor is a huge way that you can advocate for yourself when someone moves your cheese. On that note, some of you may be familiar with this concept of fixed mindset versus growth mindset, and this is something very predominant in our industry. We are a very intelligence-driven industry. We're learning all the time. We're dealing with complex and abstract solutions, and you can't always get things right the first time. And especially when we're coming from a school system that is very fixed mindset focused. You're praised for getting things right the first time. You're not praised for growing or learning or anything like that. It's important to know the difference and that you do have the capability to grow. If you suffer from a fixed mindset, you're somebody who encounters a problem, struggles with it, and says, well, I'm just not smart enough to do that. I'm not smart enough to figure that out. But that is bullshit, and you need to be training yourself to be getting into a growth mindset, which means I can learn anything. It might take me a little bit longer. I might need to read a different tutorial than somebody else to figure something out, but you can do it. You can learn. You can grow. And so when we talk about being intentional, as you're going to these sessions today and you're learning new amazing things and you're following thought leaders on Twitter, don't get down about yourself and say you will never be as good as them. Think about all the things you can learn and you can grow and put into practice, and that's what really matters.
All right, so let's talk about getting recognized at work so that you can start moving up the ladder and working on your kind of work reputation.
Channel your inner Anne.
I love this quote. So if you are willing to do more than you are paid to do, eventually you will be paid to do more than you do. So this is about proving yourself by being willing to step up and make things happen even when it's not your problem or not in your job description necessarily, or I'm not on that team, or that's somebody else's issue. Be the person who brings not the problems, but solutions. Okay?
All right, so hold up. That sounds great in theory, and I feel like we've been fed this bullshit a lot throughout your lives. Like, do the work and you will get recognized. That is not the way the real world works. I was fortunate to learn this very early in high school in marching band, where I worked my damn ass off, and somebody who did no work got the promotion that I wanted. Like, this is not the way the real world works. This is a should idea. This is a fantasy land. And this is especially dangerous thought pattern for women who are so predisposed to doing the glue work. Has anybody heard of the glue work before? Okay, got a couple head nods. The glue work are all those unseen things that go on. Maybe they're improving documentation or helping update onboarding to make a more seamless process for getting developers up to speed on the project. Maybe planning organizational outings or some sort of culture, or if somebody leaves, hosting the going away party. This is all work that often goes unrecognized, is largely done by women, and comes at the expense of our technical careers and expertise. So do not do the glue work. There are some occasions that Anne was talking about where you can step up and solve a problem, but if you continuously do the work that nobody else is willing to do, you're not necessarily going to get recognized, and it will be detrimental to your career. So be conscious and intentional about helping your team and being a good team player, but do not let it railroad you into less awesome work that is going to harm your career.
Absolutely. So to be clear, there's a difference between acute glue work and chronic glue work, okay? So if you're the one that steps up and saves a project, awesome. Make sure that someone else doesn't get credit. Make sure your manager knows when you have your performance review, and make sure you're not always the one saving everybody's ass, okay? So that's the difference. All right, so now, how do you advocate for yourself and watch out for yourself and make sure you're not a doormat and stop saving everyone's ass all the time, but also be a good team player? All right.
I have a clicker.
Whoa.
You may have seen this quote before, but this is one of my favorite quotes because, again, something we suffer very much from in the tech industry. It's better to have a hole on the team than an asshole on the team. And I'm sure I'm looking at faces now and you're thinking of that asshole.
Maybe you're wondering if you're the asshole.
Yeah, if you can't think of an asshole, you're the asshole on the team, and check yourself.
Okay, so what is a good team player versus a bad team player? All right, so a good team player ascribes good intent. So what does that mean? That means when someone says something and may not agree 100% with what you think, you're not assuming that they have malicious intent. You're assuming, okay, they're thinking of this differently than I am. You're not overly analyzing their body language and assuming that they're being a jerk or they're being snotty. You're not overly suspicious. You're ascribing good intent. Let's just assume this person, just has something to say and we're going to have a conversation now, okay? Trust me, it's a lot less stressful to live like that. All right, a good team player recognizes common ground. So it's okay to agree to disagree. Can you find some common ground? What do we agree on? All right, if you cannot compromise and you want your way 100% and you'll keep fighting until you get it, it's not a good team player. A good team player parks their ego. So for them, it's not about being right, it's about the intended outcome, being the best possible outcome for all parties. This person is secure enough to admit when they're wrong and that they don't know everything. Okay? A bad team player wants to be right all the time. They want to be known as the smartest and the rightest, and they want to feel that way, and they want other people to feel that way. And usually it's because they're extremely insecure about what they really do know. All right? A good team player searches for a solution. So I really do believe that you should bring the solutions and not just the problems, even though she rudely interrupted me with her feminist rant. A good team player tries to find a solution to a problem. Okay, in addition to exposing a problem, right? That's great. Okay, so what's the solution? Let's brainstorm with others. All right, not a team player fans the problem flames. They like to complain, exaggerate the problem, talk about how terrible the people are that caused it, and shoot down anyone's ideas for fixing it. I think they actually enjoy having a problem to bitch about. All right, so my final thought here is my number one rule in being a good team player is focusing on the outcome that you want as opposed to what you really want to say to that person, I think about this with my daughter all the time. It works good in relationships too. Sometimes you just want to yell because they're not listening, they're really pissing you off, and you've had it. But is that really going to give you the intended outcome? Is that really going to motivate Jalen to care about having a beautiful, clean room? Nope, she's just going to do it because I got really mad at her yesterday. Tomorrow she's going to forget again. There's no intrinsic motivation happening, right? So what is the intended outcome that you want as opposed to just what you feel like saying right now? And then a little bit later, I'll talk about the difference between that automatic reaction and the deliberate reaction.
Yes, and don't tweet it. Just bitch to your girlfriends over Slack about it. That's what I do to Anne all the time.
Sometimes you tweet it.
Sometimes I tweet it. So I want to introduce you all to Matt. Matt is a ROCKSTAR developer. He works at the hottest tech startup in town. He's always up to date on the coolest frameworks. You know what? Last weekend, he actually blew away the entire team's code base and rewrote it in Go because that's the hot thing to do now. Don't be Matt. So in our industry, we have this really bad kind of enigma called the ROCKSTAR developer. And we see this on, job postings all the time. Oh, seeking ROCKSTAR developer. But what that has really become synonymous with is some asshole with no life that codes 22 hours a day, brags about it, treats everybody like shit, has not met a pull request that he doesn't hate from somebody else and has let them know expressly. And this is a really pervasive problem because somehow along the way, we have come to think of this as good. This is what a good developer is. This is what a rock star is. But this is not a good team player. This is not somebody conscious or aware of their work or their impact of others. This is not somebody who is going to be considerate when new ideas come to the table that may be a better solution or may work towards a better outcome. So be aware of the stigma, and if you are somebody writing job descriptions in the room, take notes to take ROCKSTAR developer out of that job description, because what you really want are good human beings who are going to write good code, who are going to be thoughtful, who are going to be intentional, who are going to be aware of their impacts and their words on actions on other teammates, because the problem with Matt is going to drive all your other really good, really hardworking, great team player developers away. It happens time and time again. So be aware of the myth of the ROCKSTAR developer. Do not be the ROCKSTAR developer and do everything we can to no longer use this as a successful model or what a good programmer should look like.
And also don't be intimidated by that myth. It doesn't exist.
Yes.
Okay, so now meet Andrew. No is not in his vocabulary, okay? He is the epitome of a yes person. Yes, I'll help you with that. Yes, I'll take on that new project. Yes, we'll add that feature. Yes, 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 yes. I gotta tell you, shit rolls downhill, okay?
You call the shit poop.
You call the shit poop. So constantly accepting requests and needs and trying to meet them, especially when they're unrealistic, validates those unrealistic expectations, okay? You're enabling people that are overwhelming you with work. They might not even know it because you never tell them. You just say yes because it was asked of you. That just creates this huge domino effect, more like a snowball effect, where literally, shitball effect, where literally it just gets worse and worse and worse and you never actually come out from under it. As a former goody two-shoes people pleaser, let me tell you, it's not the way to go, and it's really, really hard to undo.
And I apologize for any PTSD we're giving anybody in the room who's worked in a marketing agency.
I just had a little.
and who knows what this never-ending pattern of saying yes to everything, regardless of whether it's feasible or not. I think one of the best things I ever heard was this analogy where you can't take 9 pregnant women for 1 month and have them make a baby. That's not how it works. It's not how it works with anatomy or biology, and it's definitely not how it works with getting a project done with a team of developers. So stick that one in your back pocket while we go into our next section that we love doing, which is talking about how to say no.
We love saying no. This is our new favorite thing. Okay, but how do we say it, right? This is one of my, who's seen this before? Who understands this kind of, awesome. Okay, so I'm going to explain it for those of you that don't. We've got about 40% hand raised there. So let's start with this principle. And I don't know where I got this, but I use it all the time. You can have 2 of these 3. The middle of that Venn diagram is a hole, it doesn't exist. All right, you can have it good and fast. It won't be cheap. You can have it good and cheap, it's not going to be fast. You can have it fast and cheap, ain't going to be good, right? And cheap doesn't just mean billable hours, you know? This isn't just working vendor to client. It's going to cost you a lot more if you want it that fast. Internally, this is people. It's not going to be cheap. We're going to need more people on our team. You know, you're going to have to, this is going to be at the expense of another project that's going to have to go on the back burner because you want this so quickly or so good, right? So I use this all the time, and I always start with good. And I always say, I know we want it good, right? We don't want any shit around here. We want it good, okay? So you guys can choose if you want it to be fast or if you want it to be cheap. And if you want it to be fast, then you're going to have to put something else on the back burner. Something else is going to have to go down that list. And I stick to that, and it's a very simplistic concept that sometimes works a lot better than going into all the details of what it takes to do what we do and how different than shoveling snow it is and shoveling shit.
Whoa, wait. We don't write code, it's just like pressing an easy button?
Correct.
Oh, what?
Correct. So this is a highly effective concept I've found. So now we're going to give some examples here of common situations and kind of model how you could say no in that situation.
A lot of my stories come from running my nonprofit. We are a volunteer-run organization. We have no paid staff members. So there's just a lot of things we can't do. And so one thing I commonly tell my team is we're not here to cure cancer. We get a ton of requests. I've had parents come at me before and be like, well, you need to run a Girls Who Code club at my school. And I'm like, I don't need to do shit. I am very conscious about my efforts in making the best impact I can for as many kids as I can to teach them how to code. And that does not mean sacrificing my life and my free time to run a coding class at your little girl's school in Blue Valley while, leaving the KCK kids for shit. But this is something that happens all the time, and it sucks to say no to people, but it's something you need to get comfortable with because you need to be cognizant of the time and energy it's going to take you to do something. You need to be cognizant of the return on investment that it's going to take for you to do something. You need to be intentional with your efforts, intentional with your energy, and it's okay to do that and explain that. And I also like to talk about this for leaders because I feel like leaders who aren't down in the weeds doing the code can sometimes forget the costs associated when they're not doing that day to day. So I like to explain the analogy of the chicken and the pig. Is anybody familiar with this? Okay. Yep. Scott. So there's this idea of serving breakfast, and we've got a chicken and a pig. And they have different levels of commitment when it comes to serving breakfast, right? The chickens are laying eggs. Those are getting put into omelets on the table. Versus the pig, well, the pig has to die to put the bacon on the table. So the pig has a lot more commitment and investment there. So it's important to remember that when you're leading a team, you are the chicken. You're invested, but you're not dying to make the code happen. You're not dying to make the project happen. And so when you're learning to say no, you need to be considerate of those around you and those on your team and make sure that you understand your investment and your commitment before jumping to say yes.
Yep, and one thing I want to say is that practicing saying no really makes it easier. A lot of times you build up in your head like, oh gosh, how do I say no? They're going to be mad at me, or they're going to think I'm being snotty or whatever. You just got to practice. You got to put your foot out there and take that first step because it does get easier. And I think it'll surprise you that people don't react as terribly as you expect them to. So one concept that I like to use that I've found works, I call transparency as a Trojan horse. Okay, so this is just calmly answering questions and explaining what will have to happen in order for them to have what they want, while they freak out about what they want and then calmly realize, oh my gosh, it's way more than I thought, and we should just let her keep taking care of that. She's doing fine. So here's an example. I get a request for, hey, we want to be able to get XYZ numbers out of our system, and there's not a report for that. We need more reporting in our system. We need to be able to see anything we want to see at any given time, and I can't get this report out that I just thought of this week. Okay, well, what's the report? Oh, I need to see these numbers for this year and blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool. All right, so I could create an interface for you so you could get that report out. Now, is that something where you're going to be able to want to look at that on a year-to-year basis? Are you going to want to be able to select a date range? Are the factors going to change? Like, is there going to be more than one step up in an agent's commission as he or she reaches a certain level? Or is there always going to be one step and that's never going to change? Well, there could be two. I don't know. Maybe there'll be three one day. We don't really know. Okay, so are you able to put a list down for me at all as to what the reports are that you're going to need from the system forever? Because then I can just go down that list and make them all for you in the user interface so that you always have them. But I just need that list of all the reports you're ever going to need. Well, I don't know all the ones I'm ever going to need. I just thought of this one this week. Oh, that makes total sense. Like, how are you going to know all the reports you're ever going to need, right? But that makes it really hard for me to build an interface for you that has all the reports that you're ever going to need. But guess what? If you tell me the report that you need, I can make it by doing queries in the database, and then I can just send you the spreadsheet. How about that? So you wouldn't actually have a user interface to log in and get the report yourself, but I would just make it for you. Well, why can't you just train someone on our team to do that, one of the administrative assistants? Well, we would have to probably send them through some schooling because they'd have to learn some SQL. What's SQL? SQL is a structured query language, and it's used to get information out of a database. Oh, okay, so just like when we go and we select which state we want and stuff. Well, no, it's actually writing code, but it's not terribly complicated. I mean, we could send someone through like maybe 2 semesters at a local college or something and see if they're up to snuff. Well, why would we do that? Why would we want to wait a year and spend all that money? You're right. I think it's kind of silly, too. Maybe we could just hire a data analyst on my team like I've been asking for years, and we could pay them to do things like that. And then you can have any report you want any day right away, okay? And as time goes on and you're just calmly explaining and, entertaining their opinions, it's, oh, yeah, that makes sense, oh, that's a good idea. They start to understand that you're not saying no to them because you don't want to do it. You're saying no because what they're asking for is unreasonable. So I call that transparency as a Trojan horse, and it's a great way to placate people that are initially very angry.
It's also like a little bit of playing dumb, which is one of my favorite strategies too, because then you can like get them to their own conclusions and nobody seems like an asshole. So.
This works great if you're a woman, by the way. We do have some advantages.
Yes. Thanks to that book, How to Be Successful Without Hurting Men's Egos.
I haven't read that one. I should have written it. Okay, so how to say no. Summary of tips. Okay, so things to remember. First of all, don't do what I did and try to undo all the years of saying yes. Set a precedent today. Like I just did in that example, ask questions and require a discussion when someone comes to you with a request. Whether you end up saying yes or no. Let them know that they don't get to just come to you, demand something, and you're going to get it done. Okay? Involve them in the process. Whenever I have an agent or an employee ask me for a feature addition to the system, may be a great idea. But I require that they take the time and promptly answer the questions that I have to actually turn their vague request, that may be a very good idea, into code. I need to know some details. I need you to think through this process with me. And if someone is not willing to give me that time, I'm not going to make the feature. All right? Show will and explain rationale. So show that I'd love to make that happen for you. Again, it's not that I want to say no just to be a jerk or I don't want to do anything that you ask. I want to help you. But be clear about why you can't do it or why it's going to have to go on the back burner. Just explain rationale. Offer an alternative if you can. If they come to you with something that they need and you can't get it done for them right away, but you know a solution where they can maybe get it done for themselves, offer that alternative. That's ideal because then you sent them away with a solution, they're happy, and you don't have to do anything.
I feel like that's really important when dealing with scope creep on a project, which I think a lot of people have been burned by before, is like weighing the costs and getting that person who's asking you for this one more feature to understand the realities of what goes into that.
Absolutely, yep. And honestly, they just don't know a lot of times. So explaining it, makes total sense to them. They just wouldn't have known if you didn't do that. Okay, yeah. So let's get real here and talk about conflict, another one of our favorite things. So how to say no, and now we're going to go right into conflict. So let's fight, Jennifer.
You want to fight? Because I really like saying no, and I have to a lot because of my nonprofit, just because we don't have that much money, and I can't make things happen because I just don't have the funds available to do it.
Okay, so how are you guys funded?
Well, we'll ask for sponsors. Like, we'll have big companies give us money, which is kind of tedious and it takes a while, but that's how we get most of our money.
Do you not ask your members that benefit from all of your services for donations? You know what? Come to think of it, I've been to a lot of your events and you have never asked me for money.
But that feels weird to me because we're trying to get women into technology careers and lower barriers, and if we're asking them for money, they might not be able that feels weird and against our mission.
Well, and that's why you're awesome, and you're the right person to do all this amazing work in the community that you're doing. But I think you have to understand that there are people that have come through your program and now have a new career because of you and your work and your team's work. And if you just asked them and made it easy, they would love to give back to you. In fact, I went on your website the other day because I wanted to set up like a recurring donation because I'm the official superfan, so I have to back that with action. And I had to hunt for the link. I think you need to make it a little easier.
I mean, I guess that just feels weird to me. Like, I'm bad at asking for money. Like, that's not my... I'm good at running programs, so asking for money just, like, wigs me out.
Okay, I hear you. So you're really uncomfortable with it.
Yes.
I get it.
Wow.
Okay, I get it. So how about this? How about at your birthday bash for KC Witt this summer, I stand up and I do the first ask of the people in the room and say, hey, listen, we have all benefited from this community, and if you can, whether big or small, $1 or $100, please donate to Kansas City Women in Tech. And if they want to, they will. You're not going to force anybody. And then you don't have to make the ask.
But I mean, that feels so like big and grandstanding. We're so grassroots. Or like, I feel like that would be weird to our members, no?
Well, no. And I will tell you that I support multiple nonprofits in town, and they all do that. It's okay. I promise.
Okay, this makes me really uncomfortable, but clearly I have a lot to learn, and there's a lot that I can learn from your expertise in this area.
Okay. Okay, so what did we do there? We both expressed our sides of the conversation. We both understood where the other one was coming from, and we came to a compromise solution. Hey.
Look at that.
Look at that.
No punches thrown. Not today. But the key thing here is disagreements are healthy, and when somebody disagrees with you, it's an opportunity to learn. This is a real conversation that Ann and I have had in real life, and it was something that made me deeply uncomfortable, but that didn't mean that somebody else was wrong just because it was weird for me. It was an area for me to learn and grow, and it's really important to be open to things, even if they don't feel right to you.
Yeah, and your concerns about not wanting to get away from your grassroots really helped me form how I spoke to the group that summer. I wanted to keep that energy in mind because that's the energy that you have, and that's why the organization is so successful.
This is not just a plug for Casey Witt, by the way. We're like, what's a good argument we can have?
Yeah, it's natural.
But seriously, give us money. I'm just kidding. I'm learning from her. She's teaching me.
Or have your company post their jobs to the job board, which also gives you money.
Yeah.
Unless you're a bad company, then we won't post jobs. But hopefully none of you are that.
She'll say no to that.
I will. I love saying no to that. Anyway.
Okay. So conflict is great. It improves relationships. We were talking earlier about how, we're not just talking about work relationships here. This can improve your relationship at home. Okay. Has anyone seen this episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? Okay, where they're arguing about Will's dad and how Will just kept disappointing him, Will's dad kept disappointing Will over and over again, and Uncle Phil kept telling him, I told you this guy's never going to show up for you, and eventually, they're arguing pretty heavily about it, and eventually Will breaks down and says, why doesn't he want me, man? And they have this, great embrace and hug and all of that. So multiple studies have shown that couples who argue, and you can apply this to people in general, to, nephew and uncle, are happier and more likely to stay together. Why? Because the lines of communication are open and clean. They're not clogged with a bunch of unsaid junk, unclarified stuff, ascribed intent, stories that you made up about what the other person was really thinking or why they really did something. And these people also don't wait till a problem gets too big before taking care of it. It's a lot easier to take care of things in the beginning. Like, listen, I hate it when your socks are on the floor, instead of waiting until their socks are all over the house and you completely lose it on the person, right? The same applies to your coworker relationship. So having open and honest communication means understanding them more. And has anyone ever read The Culture Code? Awesome book if you haven't. If you work with people, anyone here not work with people at all? You should read The Culture Code. It's awesome. And they talked about, I'm pretty sure it was in Pixar, where they set up these regular meetings where the whole point was to kindly rip stuff apart. So the idea was to present things that were in the works and that were new and let people from all of the other teams look at it, ask questions, poke holes in it, and criticize it in a respectful way. But the idea was to bring up stuff that might be a problem or that they didn't like. And the people that had worked on it were supposed to come in, check their egos at the door, and be open to the feedback. And they found that it, made huge gains in their creativity and the finished product being, way better and more fine-tuned. So having an argument and then reconciling afterwards, or having a conflict or a debate and then coming to an agreement afterwards builds a much stronger bond than just smiling in everyone's face all the time and then thinking or talking about things behind their back. Trust me.
It's really funny. I like to compare relationships and dating a lot to job searching because back before I was married, when I was dating, I would never get serious with a person until I had my first argument with them and found out how they thought. It was really, really important, but the same goes for jobs. It's really important to see how somebody handles conflict because there are situations that you might get into it with somebody and they refuse to compromise, they refuse to listen, they are just there to berate you, and that may not be a situation that you want to be in long term. I remember a couple jobs ago, I was having communication issues with an individual on the team. He would just rip apart my pull requests. He was really nasty. He was really critical. I couldn't ever get anything out. And I was open to learning and open to growing, but he would say a lot of things like, well, I wish you would just always want to do it my way. And I'm like, well, I'll do it your way, but you don't get to control how I think or feel. Like, that's not okay. And so I sat down with him and I had a conversation. I had my sheet. I had a list of examples. I'm like, here's a scenario where this happened. I know I would respond differently if this happened instead. Are there ways we could compromise and learn from each other and work on our communication? And he said to me verbatim, I am the way I am. I'm not going to change. And at that day, I updated my resume and I started looking for a new job because it blew my mind, somebody who was so critical of code, any line of code, and how it could be refactored and written to be better, to refuse to take the same approach to his own communication. It just blew my mind. But
good luck in life, dude. Like, that just doesn't work.
I feel so bad for his poor child the first time he misses a soccer goal. Oof. But it's important to know how people disagree and how they deal with conflict, because not everybody is going to handle it well, and you need to protect yourself if you do your best effort and are in a no-win situation.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, conflict is how great things happen. Like, I could have just sat at each one of Jennifer's events and been like, they're never going to go anywhere and stand on their own 2 feet because they never ask anybody for money, I went to their website and I can't find a way to donate. I mean, they're never going to be self-sustaining that way, That doesn't help anybody. It just makes me feel like, oh, I'm so smart. I've been to these other nonprofit things and learned stuff that they do, but I'm not going to share it, And guess what? I like to assume that there's something I'm missing. Because, man, isn't it embarrassing when you think you know everything and then you talk to someone about it and you realize you completely missed something? And it's really embarrassing, right? So I like to ask questions like, why don't you ask for donations? Why don't you guys do that? Maybe there's a great reason, Maybe she just needed to be nudged out of feeling guilty about it. Hey, at the end of the day, we felt awesome about the fact that we were successfully able to ask for donations at this event that they had. We felt like we did it together. It didn't feel like it was my idea that saved the day, and vice versa. We felt like we did it together, and, we've had conversations about different topics in the same way since, and it's one of the reasons you're an awesome friend.
Yeah, and I was about to say, if you really want to be intentional, make sure you have a friend who tells you when you need to put on your big girl panties. Okay, so we've kind of talked about people and dealing with situations, and this is a really great quote about great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people. And I feel like this can really come into play because we are very passionate individuals. We care about the technology, we care about the code we're writing, and that can lead to some pretty passionate emotional behavior. And it's very easy to take a criticism or somebody not agreeing with your idea and relate that to the person and their attributes and their characteristics. So one of the things that I live by and I really coach my team on is the fact that we judge ourselves by our intent and others by their actions. So if we can be a little bit more aware of people's intent and where they're coming from versus just making assumptions based on their actions, because we're not psychic, y'all. And we need to be aware that nobody knows what's going on in our heads. We don't know what's going on in other people's heads. But if we're aware that people usually have the best intent and we go into our conflicts and our discussions with that in mind, we'll have a much better end result.
10 minutes. All right, so let's talk about boundaries. All right, we've also gotten very good at this. So setting boundaries is really hard, especially at first, but it's important. When you're young, like we mentioned earlier, you often get the message that the harder you work, the better. And in reality, you can either learn this the hard way or listen to us now. You've got to work smarter rather than harder, and you got to know your own limits. So I love to tell this story about Bob and Larry. These are not real names, but this is a real story that happened. So Bob and Larry are two people that I work with, and they have email accounts at our company, let's say, and they apparently think that I store everyone's email passwords somewhere and actually know them, okay? Which I do not, nor can I look them up, but that's a whole other thing to explain to them. So Bob emails me on a Saturday and says, hey, I got a brand new iPad. I need to set up my email on it, and I don't have my email address. Can you send it to me ASAP? Okay? Now, I know Bob a little bit, so I've learned how to handle him in this type of model that Bob represents. Okay? It's a little bit of machine learning of people. So Bob is in his 30s. He looks a lot like Matt, the ROCKSTAR developer, acts a lot like Matt, the ROCKSTAR developer. Okay, but he's not a ROCKSTAR developer, because if he was, he would know that I can't give him his email password. But he thinks that I need to respond to his request now, because it's very important that he uses his iPad, because he has important work to do all the time. Okay? And he doesn't respect me, and he doesn't care about what I'm doing on a Saturday. I'm at the park with my daughter. Okay? I don't respond to Matt until Monday when I get to the office, and I send him an email that says, I cannot look up your password. You'll have to use the forgot password link. And that's all I say. I don't add any extra niceties. Hey, sorry for the delay. Oh, hey, blah, blah, blah. Nope. This is it, Matt. This is how I deal with you. Okay? Matt gets the message, backs down a little bit, has a little more respect for me next time. Okay? Larry does the same thing. Okay? Larry sends me a text on Saturday as well. And, hey, I'm so sorry to bother you on a Saturday, but I forgot my email password, and I'm trying to get logged in at my sister's house. Can you help me out? Okay? Now, I know Larry too, and I have a different model for dealing with him. Larry means well. He just thinks I'm magic. Larry's like 65, okay? 65, 70s, older, and he thinks technology is magic. He thinks I'm magic. He thinks I know everything, including his passwords to his Facebook and his email, and he would probably be happy if I did. And he just doesn't realize that I don't, and it's not that easy, okay? So Larry doesn't actually want me to just drop everything and, go send him instructions on how to do the forgot password thing. He just thinks I know. So I go ahead and respond to Larry, because I know that his intentions are a little different after getting to know him. And I say, hi, Larry. It's Ann. I actually cannot look up your password, nor do I know it off the top of my head for security purposes. When I get back to the office on Monday, I'll send you instructions on how to do that. Enjoy the weekend with your family. Okay? So a very nice way of setting boundaries and saying no, and also letting him know that that's something that I can do when I'm in the office.
Nailed it. I feel like the more you deal with bullshit, the more sacred you realize your weekends are. Like, it's okay to turn off Slack on the weekends. I promise. Nothing's going to catch on fire. It'll be great. But one of the cool things about my job is I work at a consulting company that does JavaScript consulting, and they're very community focused, which means I get to build trainings around like Angular or different frameworks, and I get to give them around the country, around the world. And so I gave a training probably like a month or two ago, and it was an Angular training. It was a 2-night event, like we were going 4 hours, and there was an attendee that basically tapped out the first night and was like, this is hard, I don't want to go. Okay, whatever. Well, then she jumps into my nonprofit Slack and messages me at 8 a.m. on Saturday morning saying, hey, I'm working on the tutorial, I can't figure this out, I need this information from you. It's my Saturday morning, I'm out on the deck, I'm drinking coffee, I'm petting my cats. I don't give a shit what you need from me. Like, this is my weekend, this is my sacred time, I prioritize work-life volunteer balance, and so I ignore the message. When I don't respond for 20 minutes on a Saturday morning at 8 a.m., so 8:20, she starts messaging other women in the Slack trying to get a hold of me. And at this point, like, Mama Bear comes out. Like, I lose my shit. Like, if you go after my team and push boundaries, I will come at you. And so I reach out to my team and I'm like, hey, I just want to let everybody know, like, you need to be comfortable setting boundaries. You all dedicate a lot of time to our nonprofit. That does not mean you are on call for every whim of every person who's ever attended one of our events. If you need help setting boundaries, please let me know. I will be more than happy to work with you on doing that, because some people aren't comfortable doing it. And so I think it's our job to step up as leaders, because obviously Ann and I don't give a shit. We will set boundaries all day long, but not everybody can do that, and it's important to be cognizant and help those around you set those boundaries so they can prioritize their work-life balance as well.
Absolutely. So just a quick summary. Junior devs, try your best to figure a problem out before turning to a senior dev and asking them for their time. Senior devs, instead of just handing over the fish, invest some more time to teach them how to fish on their own. And everyone, turn off your notifications on the weekend unless you're on call. Don't check your email or Slack. It'll do wonders for your life.
Truth.
All right, so now we're going to talk about tapping into your survival instincts, fight or flight. knowing when to hold them and knowing when to fold them. So I'm going to talk about negotiation here. Okay, who's ever had to negotiate for a salary or a project cost, hourly rate? Awesome. Okay, great. Who wished they had negotiated and just took the first offer that they were given? I did that one time. Okay, all right, it happens. All right, so I learned a lot from that first experience, and I like to go into a conversation like that with 3 numbers in my head. And I do this, and I realize I used to do this as an athlete, and it works really well in other situations. So your 3 numbers are: 1, the ideal number that you would love to get. And this isn't an unrealistic number, but it's almost there, right? This would be like, holy cow, I can't believe you're going to pay me this much to do this, okay?
Like Silicon Valley salary.
Yeah. 2 is the expected number, okay? So maybe what is a research-backed number after looking around on Glassdoor and maybe other places where you find salaries, okay? And then the number where if it's lower than this, you're going to walk, no questions asked, okay? So 3 numbers. All right, do your research and make sure that those numbers make sense. There's lots of different ways to do research, and it kind of depends on your job, and it depends on the company, and it depends on how open people that you know are about salaries. So networking is important there. So do your research so you can get those 3 numbers ready. And then prepare your defense, all right? You never know. You might walk in there and get offered an ideal number, and you're going to have to make sure that you keep a straight face and don't let them know that that was your ideal number, and maybe say, well, okay, well, can we talk about benefits? You know, don't act too excited about it, right? And on the flip side, if you come in there and they completely lowball you well under your walk number, you know, you're going to have to decide, what are you going to say before you get up and walk out of the room, right? Now, if they come in with your expected, what are you going to say to hopefully push them up closer to that ideal? And remember that there's lots of things you can negotiate besides a number. The number's important, it's what we all like, it sounds fanciest, right? But there's also benefits, there's vacation time, there's working from home, there's flexible hours, stuff like that. What do you guys do if all of a sudden I got to go pick up my kid early from school? What do you do? Do you make me submit a request for 45 minutes of PTO, or are you cool about that? You know, what's the culture there? Because if you pay enough, hey, I'll deal with that. But if you don't, I'm going to want some leeway there, right? So be ready to negotiate first that number, but then when you're not quite getting what you want, be ready to negotiate some of those other benefits, especially the ones that are most important to you. Also, good rule of thumb, stay calm, talk, and then shut up. That was something we were taught at the University of Nebraska by the people that trained us for media interviews. Say what you want to say, and then shut up. Because a lot of times people will keep looking at you like they want you to go on, and when you elaborate and start saying things nervously because you feel like you're supposed to fill airspace, is when you say things you don't want to say. If they really want you to give a number first, and you really don't want to, or they really want you to give in on the number that they gave, and you really don't want to, say what you want to say and what you're prepared to say, and then shut your mouth. Just let the awkward silence be there.
Yeah, it's okay to wait it out. So my most recent job search, I found this company and I found this job description and I was like, oh my God, this is me. And I sent it to all my friends and they're like, oh my God, that's you. This is the perfect job for you. And so I'm giddy excited, right? So go down, I email them, they get back to me right away and they're like, well, what's your requested salary range? And so I send them my very high number and I send them a medium number. And they come back and they're like, well, we just wanted to check. We normally go down here. And it was well below my low number, lowballed the shit out of me. And I was a little bit weird, but they're like, that can change based on the interview. So I was like, okay. So I went through with it. They called me. I flew on site for my last round interview. They called me the next night and they came in the very top of my high number. So stick to your guns, know your value, know your worth, be ready to advocate for yourself, and it works. And that leads us into, once you're in the door, knowing when to fold them, fight or flight, when to fly. Who loves coding? Okay, I'm hoping, most of the hands are up in here. You like what you do, right? We love being able to make stuff happen. It's this magical building creative feeling. If you're in a job where you hate what you do, when you normally love what you do, get out. That is the big piece of advice, because life is too short and we are so blessed. We are not people doing monotonous crap that takes no inspiration or no intelligence. We have very passionate, interesting, exciting careers. And if you are miserable doing something you love, life is too damn short. There are better opportunities out there. Get out, go find them, be happy.
Short on time. keep going. All right, we're going to keep it going here. We're almost done. All right, our last section is talking about leadership.
And I don't even like The Office that much, but this is just so. I know, I'm the worst person ever. Like, I'm not one of the people who's ever like binge watched it. Like, I'll watch it and like heh, and then move on with my life. See, we can disagree and still be friends.
I made this slide,
obviously. But the point of this is titles don't make leaders, actions do. So being a leader is not just having a certain title, it's the way you behave, it's the way you are around your team, being somebody that they look up to, that they respect, that they can feel like they can go for feedback for, that they can get ideas and inspiration or constructive criticism from. So your actions define that. It's not some senior engineer, senior team lead or something like that. It's your actions that define what you do. And the biggest thing you can do is get good at giving and receiving feedback. One of the favorite books that I recommend all the time is called Thanks for the Feedback. Really, really great book. And then having empathy for those around you. It can be really easy to get tied up in the code or the missed deadlines or sprint sizes or things like that. But if we can empathize with each other, that is the best thing you can do as a leader to be a good person for your team, regardless of whether that's reflected in your title or not.
All right, and a concept that I think is really good to keep in mind as you're developing your leadership skills and your team player skills is that your brain has two different systems. There's the fast one and the slow one. Has anyone read Thinking Fast and Slow? Okay, great book if you haven't read it. So you can think of system one as the subconscious, and system two is deliberate. System one, we need it because it's way more efficient, takes a lot less energy and time. We can make quick decisions. We can do multiple things at once. We can drink coffee and listen to a podcast and drive to work. And system two is sequential. You can do things one at a time. Things take a lot longer and it takes a lot more energy. But it's important to recognize that there are situations that really are worth your system two energy, and sometimes we don't give it that. So we have to be more deliberate in using our deliberate system. System one uses a lot of shortcuts that sometimes have very negative effects. Confirmation bias, stereotyping, ascribing intent, assuming things that we shouldn't, etc., etc. System two, again, is slow, deliberate, looking for all of the information that we can find. Reality tells us, the real world says, guess what? Things are complicated. People are different. There are a lot of ways to look at a situation. And your system one brain is like, listen, let's just focus on some simple things, simple facts that are true, and let's go from there. Let's not worry about all this other stuff. Well, when you're working with people, the other stuff matters. When you're making decisions about your company or a project, the other stuff matters. So just try to remember to slow down and put that deliberate system in the driver's seat when it's merited.
So another book for you to jot down if you have not read is Radical Candor. Absolutely one of the best leadership books I have ever read. Talks a bit more in depth than the concept of servant leadership, which is where you're there to serve your team, not boss your team around. And I'm sure you can think back to a really good boss you've had. And this is probably somebody who removed roadblocks for you. If you were struggling to get something done, they helped make that happen. They protected you from bullshit deadlines or from client demands that were unreasonable. They were a rubber duck for you. You could talk about your coding problems or figure that out, and just by that process of talking to them, get through that. That is what a servant leader looks like, and so it's important to keep that in mind. And I feel like a lot of engineers that make the transition into leadership really freak out about their technical abilities. They think they have to be the smartest one on the team. They think they have to know all the solutions, and that's not what it's all about. Leadership is about pulling out greatness from your team members. That means being a support system for them. That means removing roadblocks, helping them do what they do best. That is your job as a leader, not to be the smartest, most technical person in the room. And I feel like if you can keep that in mind, it's really important. Advocating for your team, servant leadership, raising your voice because you have more power to better the lives of those on your team are the really important things to focus on and think about.
Today, you're you. That is truer than true. There's no one alive who is youer than you. So, you are your own person. The type of leader that you're going to be is very different than somebody else. Jennifer is a different type of leader than I am. We are both very different types of leaders than my best friend, and so on and so forth. So seek out mentors. Identify people in the industry who have had success that you would like to have. figure out their pathway, go to their LinkedIn profile and figure out their steps and how long it took and what they did. Follow them on Twitter. All of those things are great, but you are looking for models. You are not looking for people to imitate. You are you. You're going to put your own flavor into how you lead and manage other people and deal with other people, and that's the ideal setup for everybody.
Yeah, there's not one pathway to success, and then I jokingly will call ourselves boss bitches sometimes, but we are not afraid to take on situations, but it's not fair for us to say, oh, if you want to be successful, do exactly what we do.
Right.
Because we are all different, and so it's important for you to find what works for you and how to be your best version of your best self.
So in closing, we've shared with you the lessons we've learned about striking a balance between opposing forces in life and career.
We want you to be formidable. We want you to be intentional with your career, advocate for yourself, and have a growth mindset. Be aware that the world is your oyster, and it's up to you to make your dreams come true.
Also, be kind. Be a good person, be a good team leader. Step it up in your communication and your candor and how you approach conflicts and say no. Practice servant leadership.
But being kind does not mean taking shit from anyone. So know to set boundaries, know when to hold them and when to fold them, and advocate for yourself. Do not set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm.
Thank you for letting us go a little over time. And for the opportunity. I don't think we have time for questions, right? You guys are on it. Where's Todd?
I'm here.
He seems
Hey.
very concerned.
Do you want to do questions, or let's just?
I'm not,
I mean, if there are questions,
Anybody has
maybe we do like a
questions?
couple minutes. Anybody have a question?
It's okay. I think we'll catch up on the schedule anyway, so it's fine if anybody has any questions.
Y'all are shy anyway, so we don't have any questions.
Have a great day, wonderful
Have a great
humans.
day.